My name is Trevor Mitchell. Last August, I pulled over because I thought I was helping a stranded family. About 15 minutes later, I realized the little girl standing on the side of the road wasn't with them at all. I still don't know who she was. Every summer, I drive from Minneapolis to northern Minnesota to spend a weekend at my uncle's cabin. It's about a 4-hour drive, and after you get past the bigger towns, the highways become long stretches of forest with almost no traffic. It was late August, around 7 in the evening. The sun was starting to set, but there was still plenty of daylight. About an hour from the cabin, I came around a bend and saw a silver SUV parked on the shoulder with its hazard lights flashing. Standing beside it was a man waving both arms. A woman stood near the passenger door, and sitting on the guardrail was a little girl who looked maybe 8 or 9 years old. I slowed down. The guy walked toward my truck but stopped a few feet away. "Sorry, man. Our radiator blew. We've got zero service out here." He pointed to the girl. "My daughter's getting scared." I looked over. She wasn't crying. She wasn't saying anything. She was just swinging her legs. I offered to call roadside assistance. The man pulled out his phone. No signal. Mine didn't have any bars either. That checked out. He asked if I could give him a ride to the next gas station about 15 minutes away. It sounded reasonable. I looked at the woman. She gave me a tired smile and shrugged. I said, "Sure." He thanked me, then turned toward the SUV. Instead of getting in my truck, he walked over and leaned into the driver's window for almost 30 seconds, like he was talking to someone inside. I figured maybe another kid was back there. When he came back, he climbed into my passenger seat. As we pulled away, I looked in the mirror. The woman was still standing beside the SUV. The little girl was still sitting on the guardrail. Neither of them waved. About 5 minutes into the drive, the guy started making conversation, asked where I lived, what I did for work, whether I came up north often. It felt normal, until he asked, "You staying at a cabin?" I laughed. "How'd you know?" He smiled. "Everybody headed this way is." That made sense. Then he asked, "Just you?" I said, "My uncle's already there." He nodded, didn't say another word for almost a minute. Then he suddenly asked, "You got any guns at the cabin?" I actually laughed because the question was so random. "No." He stared out the windshield. "Huh." A few minutes later, he asked me to pull over. I looked around. There wasn't anything there, just trees. I thought the gas station was another 10 minutes. He pointed down a gravel road I hadn't even noticed. "My brother lives down there." "I'll just walk." Something about that immediately felt wrong. There weren't any houses, no mailbox, nothing. Just a narrow road disappearing into the woods. I said, "I can take you to the station?" He shook his head. "No. Pull over." His tone had changed. Not angry, just firm. I slowed down but didn't stop. Then my phone buzzed. 1 bar of service. A text came through from my uncle. "Where are you?" I don't know why, but seeing that message snapped me back into reality. I kept driving. The man sighed. "You missed it," I said. "I'll turn around at the station." He didn't answer. For the next 2 minutes, neither of us spoke. I pulled into the brightly lit gas station. There were 3 other cars outside. The second I parked, he reached for the door, didn't thank me, didn't look back. He walked straight across the parking lot, past the gas station, past the convenience store, and disappeared into the woods behind the building. I just sat there. Something about the whole thing felt off. Inside the station, I asked the cashier if there had been an SUV broken down a few miles back. He frowned. "What color?" "Silver." He shook his head. "Haven't heard anything." Then he asked, "Was there a little girl sitting on the guardrail?" I froze. "Yeah." He looked at another employee. The guy behind the counter immediately said, "They're back again." Apparently, several drivers had reported seeing the same SUV over the previous month, always around sunset, always with a man, a woman, and a little girl. Sometimes the man asked for jumper cables. Sometimes he asked for a ride. Sometimes he asked people to follow him down that same gravel road. The sheriff's office had searched it twice. There were no houses, no registered property, nothing, just abandoned logging trails. The cashier told me deputies believed they were targeting people heading to cabins because they were usually carrying cash, coolers, fishing gear, or expensive equipment. I drove back toward where I'd picked him up. The SUV was gone. There weren't even any fresh tire tracks on the shoulder. A few weeks later, my uncle mailed me a newspaper clipping. It wasn't about an arrest. It was just a warning from the county sheriff telling drivers not to stop for stranded vehicles on isolated highways. Instead, they said to call 911 and keep driving. I've done exactly that ever since, because every time I think about that evening, I don't remember the man. I don't remember the woman. I remember the little girl. She never smiled. She never cried. She never looked at me once. She just kept swinging her legs, like she'd done it 100 times before. My name is Ethan Carter. Last July, I almost let a complete stranger lure me and 3 of my friends into a part of the lake where nobody would have heard us scream. The scary part is, if he'd walked up to me anywhere else, I probably never would have trusted him. But because he looked like a park ranger, I never questioned a single thing. Every summer, my friends Logan, Chris, Dylan, and I spend one Saturday at Pine Hollow Reservoir in Wisconsin. It's one of those giant lakes surrounded by forests, campsites, and hiking trails. During the afternoon, it's packed with families, but by sunset, it empties out fast. We rented kayaks around noon and stayed on the water most of the day. By around 7, we were exhausted and heading back toward the marina. That's when a guy standing on one of the docks waved us over. He looked exactly like someone who worked there. Dark green shirt, cargo pants, work boots, a radio clipped to his belt, even one of those laminated badges hanging from his pocket. He smiled and said, "Hey guys, sorry, can I borrow you for like 5 minutes?" I remember laughing and saying, "Depends how much work it is." He laughed too. "Nothing crazy." He told us another group had reported an abandoned rental kayak tucked inside one of the coves across the reservoir. Since we were already on the water, he asked if we could paddle over and see if it was still there before they sent one of the employees hiking all the way around. It sounded completely reasonable. Before we left, though, he asked a couple weird questions. "Did you guys drive here?" "Yeah." "Which lot?" I pointed toward the main parking lot. He nodded. Then he asked if we were staying overnight anywhere around the lake. I remember thinking, why does that matter? But I answered anyway. "No, we're heading home." He smiled. "Perfect." I didn't think anything of it then. Looking back, that was probably the first red flag. As we paddled away, Logan looked over his shoulder. "You guys notice he never wrote anything down?" "What?" "The kayak. He never asked for a number." I shrugged. Maybe he already knew which one it was. The further we paddled, the quieter everything got. No fishing boats, no kids, no jet skis, just insects. About 10 minutes later, Chris pointed toward the shoreline. "There he is." The same guy's pickup truck was crawling down a dirt service road beside the lake. Every time we stopped paddling, it stopped. When we moved again, it moved. Eventually, it disappeared behind the trees. Nobody really said much after that. The cove he sent us to was completely empty. No kayak, no people, nothing. Just muddy shoreline and thick woods. Logan called out, "Hello?" No answer. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Wrong cove. It was him. My mistake. His voice sounded calmer than before. Keep going north another few hundred yards. I said, how'd you get my number? There was a couple seconds of silence. Then he laughed. Rental office. I looked at everyone else. Nobody said anything. It sounded believable enough, so we kept going. I wish we hadn't. The second cove felt wrong. I don't really know how else to explain it. It wasn't just quiet, it felt abandoned. There were old fire pits on shore, broken beer bottles, a ripped-up tent, like people used to hang out there but stopped. Then I smelled cigarette smoke. Fresh smoke. Logan whispered, "Do you guys smell that?" Chris nodded. "I thought that was one of you." None of us smoked. A second later, a truck door slammed somewhere in the trees, not close, but close enough. Then we saw him. The pickup slowly rolled between two trees until it reached the shoreline. He climbed out. Only now. The green shirt was gone, gray t-shirt, no radio, no badge, nothing. He smiled exactly the same way. "There you guys are." He grabbed a yellow tow rope from the truck bed. "You can pull the kayaks up over here." Nobody moved. He laughed. "Relax. I'm not going to make you carry them far." Still, nobody moved. Then he pointed farther down the bank. "No, not there. Over here." His smile disappeared the second he said it. That's when I saw someone standing in the trees behind him. At first, I honestly thought it was another camper. Then I realized he'd been standing there the entire time, perfectly still, hands at his sides, just watching us. The first guy looked over his shoulder for maybe half a second, almost like he was checking whether the other guy was ready. That's all I needed. I looked at my friends and quietly said, "Turn around." Nobody argued. We spun our kayaks around and started paddling. Nobody chased us. Not immediately. For about 15 seconds, nothing happened. I actually started feeling stupid. Maybe we just embarrassed ourselves. Then, splash. I looked back. The first guy had dragged a kayak out from underneath a pile of branches. It had been hidden there the whole time. He shoved it into the water and started paddling after us. Hard. Logan yelled, "Go!" We all started paddling as fast as we could. My shoulders were already burning. Then another splash. Chris looked behind us. Oh my God. The second guy had another hidden kayak. Now both of them were coming. Neither one yelled. Neither one threatened us. They just kept paddling. Fast. Silent. I looked back maybe 30 seconds later. One of them was gone. I thought maybe he'd tipped over. Then Logan said something I'll never forget. "Don't look left." Of course I looked, about 20 feet away. The second guy was standing waist deep in the water. He wasn't swimming, he wasn't waving. He was just standing there, watching us drift past. I have no idea how he got there without making a sound. That image still pops into my head sometimes. We finally reached the open part of the reservoir, where two fishermen were trolling near the middle of the lake. The moment the men noticed the fishing boat, everything changed. The guy in the kayak stopped paddling. The man standing in the water slowly turned around and walked back toward shore. Neither of them looked at us again. By the time we reached the marina, they were gone. We found an actual park ranger and told him everything. He listened for a minute before interrupting me. "What employee talked to you?" We described him. The ranger looked genuinely confused. Then he said, "There are only two of us working today." He pointed to himself. "And my supervisor." Neither of them had left the marina since noon. The sheriff's office came out and took our statements. They searched that side of the lake before it got dark. They found tire tracks. They found two spots where kayaks had clearly been dragged into the water, but they never found the truck or the men. About a month later, a campground around 40 minutes away posted security camera footage online. The video showed a man wearing what looked like a park ranger shirt, walking from campsite to campsite after dark. The caption said he'd been telling campers they needed to relocate because of bear activity. The county sheriff commented underneath telling anyone who recognized the man to call them immediately. 2 days later, the video was gone. No explanation, no update. Maybe they caught him, maybe they didn't. I don't know. But I do know one thing. If we'd dragged our kayaks onto that shoreline because a man in a green shirt politely asked us to, I don't think anyone would have found us until the next morning. My name is Mason Bennett. 3 summers ago, I opened my front door for a man who claimed he worked for the electric company. About 20 minutes later, I found out there never was any scheduled work on our street. By then, he already knew I was home alone. It happened in early August while my parents were on vacation. I was 21, home from college and watching their house for the week. It was one of those really hot afternoons where the air outside almost shimmered off the pavement. Around 2 o'clock, somebody knocked on the front door. When I opened it, there was a guy wearing a bright orange safety vest, jeans, work boots, and a white hard hat tucked under his arm. Parked at the curb was an older white pickup truck with an amber light bar on top. It looked official enough. He smiled and said, "Sorry to bother you. We're replacing a transformer down the road. There's a chance your power might flicker for a few minutes." I thanked him. He started walking away. Then he turned back around. "Anyone else home?" I said, "No, just me." The second I answered, I wished I hadn't. He smiled again. "All right, just didn't want anyone getting surprised." He left. I locked the door and didn't think much about it. About 15 minutes later, the power went out. Then it came back on. I actually remember thinking, guess he wasn't lying. A few minutes after that, someone knocked again. Same guy. "Everything come back okay?" "Yeah." "Mind if I check your breaker panel real quick? Sometimes one phase doesn't reset." I hesitated. He pointed toward the truck. "My partner's finishing the work." I glanced outside. There really was someone sitting in the driver's seat. I opened the screen door but didn't unlock the main one. "Our breaker's in the garage," I said. He looked past me into the house. Even easier. Something about the way he said it made me stop. I told him I'd check it myself. He didn't argue. He just nodded. No problem. As I shut the door, I noticed he never once looked at the electrical meter on the side of the house. He'd spent the whole conversation looking inside. I went into the garage anyway. The breaker was fine. When I came back, the truck was gone. I figured that was the end of it. About an hour later, I was upstairs playing video games when my dog started barking. Not excited barking, the kind he only does when someone's in the backyard. I looked out my bedroom window. The same white pickup was parked in the alley behind our fence. I couldn't see the men, just the truck. I grabbed my phone and walked downstairs. As soon as I reached the kitchen, I heard the side gate click open. Then footsteps. Slow, not trying to be quiet, just confident. I peeked through the blinds. The same guy was walking across our backyard. No safety vest anymore, no hard hat, just a gray t-shirt. He stopped beside the back door and looked through the window. I froze. My dog started growling. The man knocked twice. Then he smiled. Not because he saw me, because he knew I was there. My phone was already in my hand. I called my dad first. He answered immediately. The first thing he asked was, "Why are you whispering?" I told him everything. He interrupted me. "Call 911, right now." I hung up and did exactly that. While I was talking to the dispatcher, I watched the guy walk around my backyard like he owned the place. He looked into every window, tried the gate leading to the driveway. Then he disappeared around the front of the house. The dispatcher told me officers were only a few minutes away. Those were probably the longest 3 minutes of my life. Then, My front doorknob started turning. Slowly, not shaking, not forcing it, just turning. Like whoever was outside genuinely expected it to be unlocked. My dog exploded into barking. The knob stopped moving. A few seconds later, a truck door slammed. When officers arrived, the pickup was already gone. One deputy asked if I'd actually seen any company logos on the truck. I realized I hadn't. Not one. The next morning, my dad called the electric company. There hadn't been any maintenance scheduled anywhere near our neighborhood. No crews, no transformer work. Nothing. A couple days later, one of our neighbors checked his security camera after hearing what happened. It caught the white pickup driving slowly down our street that same afternoon. The driver stopped in front of 6 different houses. He knocked on every door. If someone answered, he stayed for a minute or two. If nobody answered, he left almost immediately. The police believed they were looking for empty houses, or maybe homes where only one person was inside. They never identified the men. To this day, whenever someone wearing a safety vest knocks on my door unexpectedly, the first thing I do isn't answer. It's look for a company logo, because the last guy who looked like he belonged there absolutely didn't.